Hello there and a very warm welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I am Victor Matthias. The question of journalist safety came to the forefront in the trade union movement in the late 1980s, spearheaded by the Dutch Union of Journalists. A worldwide action program was launched by the International Federation of Journalists to reduce the risks which journalists face in the line of duty. Nigeria may not have been listed as one of the 10 worst places for journalists to operate in the world, but that doesn't mean that journalists in Nigeria do not face challenges. Today on the program, our focus is to find out what these challenges are and also find out what can be done to mitigate them. But just before we begin, we will take you through the top searches on Google Nigeria. Shekau, Boko Haram has been on the list of hot gists in Nigeria for quite a while now. It has become a common act for Nigerians to flip the pages of newspapers for updates on the insurgents' recent mayhem. This time around, users not only searched Google for Boko Haram, but for its supposed leader and media personality, Abubakar Shekau, who was rumored to have been killed by the military. Chibok girls. The Chibok girls were again in the news this week with rumors of their release. The news began to make rounds on various conventional and social media platforms that some of the abducted Chibok girls escaped and were seen near the Maimalari barracks in Maiduguri. The information spread like wildfire across the nation and beyond. The defense headquarters, however, denied the alleged release via a tweet. Other top searches include the newly released bent iPhone 6, Frank Lampard's equalizer against his former club for Manchester City, and Amber Rose's split from hubby Wiz Khalifa. That's it on the searches. Let's now begin our findings.
We have to start categorizing the hazards journalists have had to go through. Of course, people always talk about the security hazards. But again, in a country like Nigeria, we have economic hazard, we have social hazards. So we have to start breaking these things down so people can really understand. You know, it's not just a one-way traffic thing where we just say, oh, well, is the security of the journalist even in the course of doing his or her job or filing his or her reportage, you know. So there's economic hazard that is also very critical in a country like ours. Let's say it as it is. Journalists in Nigeria have been forced to that situation, and that's economic hazards. We're not even talking about life insurance policies right now. We're not even talking about the other benefits that should come with the profession, like accommodation, housing, transport. There are lots of journalists, even in this town, that if they have to file that story, they find their way to the various assignments and ensure that they file the story. And people start comparing Nigerian journalists and what happens in Chibok and why the fact that they didn't go to Chibok to cover it. You know, is it the journalist that hasn't been fed that has to go to Chibok to cover an assignment? So these are the questions about economic hazard. The journalist that hasn't been paid in months has to go to Chibok. Again, media owners are also largely guilty of it. I've been running a platform for a while, and I can tell you clearly that I told myself that if anything takes me into the profession of probably owning a media platform, I will never owe people that are going to be working there. It's that simple. It's difficult, but we need to create this attitude of responsibility. Even if it's small, ensure that that amount is paid to the people that deserve it. There are media owners in this country that make so much and immediately forget about the journalists. They just assume, oh well, your ID card is enough to sustain you. That's a culture we have to change because Nigerian journalists are really suffering. That's the economic hazards I'm talking about.
The evolution of Nigerian journalism, from the way I look at it, is not set up to deliver the service, to deliver journalism as the kind of service that is supposed to be in Nigerian society. Journalism and journalism practice and ownership of media is primarily access to power, and every other thing appears to be, how would I say, a secondary consideration, including, like she said, the payment, even payment of salaries and the from journalists appears to be a secondary consideration when you're talking about the Nigerian journalism space. If you look from the beginning, if you actually study the history of Nigerian journalism, you find out that it is primarily a vehicle to access power. That is the
Absolutely.
first. That is first and foremost. Even the business aspect of it, even the business aspect of it, is secondary. Even the issue of journalist welfare appears to be secondary. And so you have a system that is not built to deliver what it should deliver in a society like this, which is to hold power accountable, which is to inform the public, which is to tell them the things that they need to know, and the things that they should that they should hold to be very important.
The danger of first being a journalist is that you could be attacked, you could be killed. We have a lot of examples of that within society. And I have my own mentor in journalism. His name is Declan Opaliki. And for a long period, he's always said, no story is worth really your life. Give it your best shot. Give it your best try. Most times we don't. Most of them don't have insurance. These are the issues that we should bring to the front burner and articulate. Yeah, I don't want to mention media organizations because I can't be too sure if these are the facts of it. But a lot of journalists, media houses, not paying journalists very well. Going them for 5-6 months. I've heard people saying the editor tells you have a column. That's your bargaining right. That's your bargaining power. I give you the right to use it and to earn any fee you want to earn. So the context, that's the issue we should throw up when it comes to media ethics. I'm up for people raising names, for people naming names. Which media organization does not pay? What do you pay an average journalist in your organization? Is this the standard? Do they have medical? Do they have health insurance? And those are the questions we should all ask from this. It still reeks of like a game where the people at the top just schemes off the entire revenue and just leave the guys on the ground to just seek survivalist approach to their issues.
We have folks that can go all the way down to ensure that they become the manpower of today by filing stories from the real conflict zones. But how are they going to get these stories done if they don't even have the very first means? Some of these people have families to take care of. Most of these people have people depending on them. So they have to survive. It's about survival, really. It's about survival. And the political class and those that own these platforms, they know that. So they use it against you. Like you've had cases of people telling you this platform is one of the biggest in this country. If because we don't pay you, you don't want to stay working, you know the door. Take a walk. And there's this pride with which they used to tell you these things. They are unapologetic about it because they know that if you're working for platform A and it's so big that one Mr. B wants to get his own story carried on that platform on a Monday, they know that you can make as much money as you want to make. But is that ethical? But while we are talking about ethics and morality, we also have to look at survival. That these journalists are humans, they have people to take care of them, they have people that depend on them, and they have to survive. So we have to put these things into context. But I know truly and surely that the same Nigerian journalists that worked so hard to ensure that we got to where we are in Nigeria today have done so well, but they can do even much better if we ensure that the media institutions we have in this country are well established to take care of them and to cater for their needs.
People like Boko Haram will only abduct journalists they see. Like Mesle rightly talked about. If you don't go to Maiduguri, you don't get abducted and you don't get used for any theater kind of killing to make it very theatric and everything, because that is basically what happens with the ISIS and the journalists that they managed to kidnap. They only kidnap journalists who went there in the first place. So if you don't go to Bama, if you don't go to Konjuga, if you don't go to Maiduguri, you don't get kidnapped, and then of course you don't get beheaded. So I think that's where that ends. So perhaps if it ever happened that we have journalists going into enemy lines trying to report, then maybe you begin to have issues of kidnapping and the like. And if any journalist ever got kidnapped by Boko Haram, well, unless the media house amount of money to get journalists alive, I don't think the person will ever come out and escape by one law or the other. As you can see, the Chibok girls have been there. This is the 177 days. Even with all the outcry locally and internationally, they are still where they are. And I really doubt that the Nigerian government to bat an eyelid over a single journalist who has been abducted by Boko Haram, should that ever happen.
I know there's a gross problem with the pay, with the living conditions of a journalist and things around that. But the question I see some sparkling lights of excellence in that space. I see people who have won awards, who have transited to other countries to do excellent journalism, who keep doing it big, who keep raising the bar, who are getting promoted along. For example, Itoyosi Ogunse is a clear example of who I say, oh, this is a brilliant journalist. And you find that the kind of journalism I see is that people who really are satisfied with the status quo, where they all just want to be. I think classes of journalism, data journalism, we bring them in on Saturday, and we teach them how to use new tools to improve journalism, to explain journalism. And most of them, they would come, they would eat good food. You tell them to submit assignments. Nobody's going to submit assignments. So I first think the question is, most people are not even looking, you don't even understand the next steps of journalism. You don't even understand how big it will be present compared to what they are doing at the moment, which is just, where I see most times is collect press release. If you ask them, if you give them the 10,000 naira, they're fine, and it's over. Your press release in a rehearsed or in a redressed way makes the newspaper headlines, and it's over. And I don't think that's journalism. And I think that this kind of question that stems from the current issue with TB Joshua, where people received 50,000 naira. On what? You look at that session, and it was like a banter session. It was like a session where they just had come to have a party. Someone asking, what should we now write now? What should we write now? A sense of confusion, like a severe content. That's the way we take journalism now.
I don't like calling government all the time, but there are cases where I have to call government. Where there are institutional frameworks that makes things work for you. NBC reminds you of playing a particular video that is wrong. NBC reminds you of someone saying something that shouldn't be, and they give you fine for that. Why don't we have professional body owned by government that gets to regulate, to take these things up? Why don't we have professional body that reminds you that a journalist is entitled to life insurance, and not just telling you, no, you shouldn't say this. If you say this, we are going to go back to civil war, and all that they like saying to turn people off. So our media the act that was formed to work the era. So at some point we have to tweak some of these our laws and stop witch hunting those people that are coming out to talk about the state of the nation, that come to talk about what the president has done and hasn't done right. And the next thing, the guy is being picked up because they are saying, the station is given a fine for allowing the guy go on air. As a matter of fact, there are some stations that before you go on air, they have to brief you on what to say. Why don't we move away from that long age of military era that doctors what you want to say and how you want to say it, to even protecting the journalists that is ensuring you go on air and talk about these things. To even protect the journalists that ensures that whatever speeches the president is going out to say, or whatever the president is going out to talk about, the people get to hear about it. We need institutional frameworks that functions, because if institutions like the NBC and the necessary bodies that get to guide media owners and how they function have this at the back of their hearts, the next day I'm going to get my television license, they are going to sit me down and say, Mercy, if you are going to have 10 staff to run this television, you need to ensure that they have life insurance to even start with. If not, you cannot take off. If not, we're not going to give you life insurance. We need this framework that functions. That's the point. That's when people are going to take these things seriously. If you're going to build and you don't have the wherewithal to build and what it takes by the Engineering Society of Nigeria, they're not going to allow you to build. Your building project is not going to be approved. So we should also take it up even in the field of journalism. We should also take it up even in the profession itself. We have the Nigerian Bar Association. You have to go to law school before you even become a lawyer. Why don't we have institutions that function for the Nigerian journalists?
Well, that's what they think are some of the dangers facing journalism, but do remember you can send your comments and contributions as well using the hashtag Dangers in Journalism. We take a break and Simon Ateba will join us to add to what they have said. Don't go away.